Hi everybody, welcome to GTCoding. In this tutorial series, we are creating this design using React.js. Now in the previous video, we completed designing the desktop version. Now in this video, we will start making it responsive. So we have the tablet version and also the smartphone version over here. So we will start designing this in this video. Let's get started. Right here, I'm in my source code, and the first thing we will do is we will add some media queries to the index.css file. So let's open the index.css file, and here we have some basic styling that applies throughout the website. So here let's add some media queries. So first of all, I'll just create a media query. So just type at media, and we'll set the max width to 1040 pixels. So whenever the screen width is less than 1040 pixels, all the CSS in this block will be added to our design. So let's go back to our browser, and I'll just open the inspector, and I'll just minimize it. And now if we decrease the width of the browser window, we can see that the height and the width of the browser window is displayed on the top right corner. So let's set a width of less than 1040 pixels. So I'll just bring it till here. So now we have a width less than 1040 pixels. Now this will be for the tablet version. So if you scroll down, here we can see that the wrapper division, which contains all of this content, has a fixed width. So if you go back to our CSS and if you scroll up, here we can see for the wrapper we have set a max width of 1024 pixels. Now for the tablet version, we'll just change this width. So let's scroll down, and here let's tap wrapper, and I'll just set the max width to 694 pixels. And now if we go back to our browser, now we can see that we have the correct width for the wrapper. Right, that's it with the global CSS of our tablet version. Now let's write some CSS for the smartphone version. So here I'll just type a comment. I'll just type tablet version, and here let's type smartphone version, and here let's add a media query. So I'll just type at media, and I'll just set the max width to 720 pixels. So whenever the screen width is less than 720 pixels, all the CSS in this block will be added to our design. Right now when we are on a smartphone version, we'll just add some padding to the wrapper. So I'll just type wrapper, and I'll just set the padding to 0 for top and bottom and 32 pixels left and right. And now let's decrease the width of the browser window. And now we can see we have a padding of 32 pixels for the wrapper. So here we can see the padding. Let's add some other styles. So let's go back to the Figma file, and for the smartphone, let's select this heading. And if you go to inspect and if you scroll down, here we can see we have a font size of 24 pixels. So for the smartphone version, we need to decrease the font size of the heading. So let's go back and let's select all the headings inside the section. So I'll just type section h2, and let's set the font size to 24 pixels. And now we can see we have a smaller font size. Now when we have a smaller font size, we also want to change the position of this underline. We need to bring it to the top a little bit. So let's go back and let's target the underline. So the underline is basically an after selector. So here we can see we have this after selector. So I'll just select that. I'll just type section h2 : after. And if you go back to the Figma file, and if I select this rectangle, here we can see we have a width of 50 pixels. So let's add that over here, 50 pixels. And I'll just set the bottom position to 0. And now we can see this is how it looks. So the heading looks alright. Right, that's it with all the global CSS. Now let's go ahead and write the CSS for all these sections. Now what we will do is we will style the header section later, because we also need to add the mobile navigation menu of the smartphone version to this. So what we will do is in this video, we will just create the tablet and the smartphone version of all the other sections. So let's start from this section right here, which is the topics section. So let's go back to our source code and let's open the topics section. So here we have the topics section, and let's go to the CSS file, and here let's create a comment, and I'll just type tablet version. Here I'll just type at media, and we will set a max width of 1040 pixels. Now what we will do is, when we are on a tablet version, we'll just decrease the width and the height of the image. So right now we can see that this is the width and the height of the image. So let's go ahead and let's target this image. So the image is inside the topic image division. So if you scroll up here, we can see the selector. So here we can see topics, topic image img. So just copy the selector from here and let's paste it over here. And let's set the width of the image to, let's try 385 pixels, and let's set the height of the image to 280 pixels. Right now let's go back to our design, and this is how it looks. So the tablet version looks alright for the topic section. Right now let's style the smartphone version. So let's decrease the width of the browser window. And when we are on a smartphone, we don't need to display the image. So here we can see for the smartphone version, we don't have the image displayed over here. So here let's create a comment. I'll just type smartphone version, and here let's tap at media, max width of 720 pixels. And let's go ahead and copy this selector from here, and I'll just paste it over here, and we'll just set the display of the element to none so that the image is not being displayed. So now we can see that the image is not being displayed. Now we also need to position this element correctly. So for that we have this selector, topics bg element 1. So I'll just copy this selector from here and I'll just paste it down here. And for this I'll just set a right position. And if you go back to the Figma file and if we select this, here we can see from the right side we have a spacing of 32 pixels. So let's type right 32 pixels, and this is how it looks. So the smartphone version looks alright, and the tablet version is also looking alright. Right now let's move on to the next section. So let's scroll down, and this is the info section. Now for the info section, we don't want to change anything in the tablet version. So if you decrease the width of the browser window, this is how it looks. Now we need to change it in the smartphone version. So if you go to our Figma file, here we can see in the tablet version we don't have any changes. Now in the mobile version we need to bring these elements one below the other. So let's go back and let's go to the info.css file, and let's create a comment. I'll just type smartphone version, and here let's type at media, max width, and let's set it to 720 pixels. Right now let's select the container division. So if you go to the info.jsx file, here we can see we have this container division with the class of content container, and in that we have these two info content divisions. So what we will do is we'll just select that division. So let's tap #info content container. Now if you go back to the index.css file, here we can see for the content container we have already set the display to flex. So let's go back to the info file. Now here we can directly type flex direction and set it to column. And now we can see if we decrease the width of the browser window, now we can see both these elements are one below the other. Now let's also add some gap between these elements. So if you go back to the Figma file and if you select this element, here we can see we have a gap of 80 pixels. So let's go back and let's type gap of 80 pixels. Right now let's make some more changes. So let's go back to the Figma file, and if you select this image, here we can see for the image we have a height of 100 pixels. So let's go back and let's select the image. So if you go back to the info.jsx file, here we can see we have this img tag. So let's select that. I just type info content container img, and let's set the height to 100 pixels. Right now let's go back to our Figma file and let's select this heading, and for that we have a font size of 32 pixels. So let's change that. So here we can see this is the amount. So let's copy this selector from here and I'll just paste it down here, and I'll just set the font size to 32 pixels. And then we need to change the font size of the next element, which is this text. So for that we have a font size of 24 pixels. So let's go back and let's copy the selector of that. So this is the selector. I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it down here. And let's set the font size to 24 pixels. And this is how it looks. Let's also bring this element to the right a little bit. So we will have a gap of 32 pixels from the left. This is the selector. I'll just copy this and I'll just paste it down here. And let's set the left position to 32 pixels. And now we can see everything looks alright. Right now let's move on to the next section, which is the blog section. Now for the blog section we need to have a different layout for the tablet version. So let's go to the blog.css file and let's create a comment. I'll just tap tablet version and let's tap at media, max width of 1040 pixels. And now let's go back to our Figma file and let's take a look at the tablet version. So here we can see for the tablet version we need to display 2 of these blog posts at the top, and then we need to display the third blog post at the bottom, and we need to have this full width for that. So let's do that. Let's go back, and if you scroll up, here we can see for the content container we have set the grid template columns to 1fr, 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 which means 3 columns. So I'll just copy this selector from here and I'll just paste it down here. And here I'll just type grid template columns and I'll just set it to 1fr, 1fr, which means 2 columns. So now we can see there are 2 columns over here. But for the third element we need to have full width. So for that let's go back and let's select the last post. So here we can see we have this division with the class of post. So we need to select the last post. So here I'll just type hash blog post colon nth child, and here I'll just type 3. So this will select the third child, and for that you have to type grid column and you have to type 1 by 3. So this will set the full width for the third element, and now we can see this is how it looks. Right, that's it with the tablet version. Now let's go ahead and style the mobile version. So I'll just decrease the width of the browser window and let's go back to our Figma file. And here we can see for the mobile version we have all these elements one below the other. So let's go back to our CSS and I'll just type at media, max width of 720 pixels, and I'll just copy this selector and paste it down here. And here I'll just type grid template columns and I'll just set it to 1fr, which means 1 column. And now we can see we have just 1 column, but since we had added this grid column of 1 by 3 for this element, these 2 elements are displayed in a different way. So I'll just copy this from here and paste it down here for the mobile version. So here I'll just add a comment. I'll just type smartphone version. And here I'll just change the grid column to 1 by 2. And now let's go back. And now we can see everything looks alright. So with that we have styled the mobile version of the blog section. Now let's go ahead and move on to the next section, which is the testimonial section. So let's go back to our project and let's open the testimonial.css file and let's create a comment. I'll just type tablet version and let's type at media, max width of 1040 pixels. Right, now let's go back to our Figma file and let's see how the testimonial section is displayed. So this is the tablet version and we can see all the testimonials are displayed one below the other. So let's go back and let's copy the container division. So I'll just copy this selector from here and I'll just paste it down here, and here I'll just set the flex direction to column. And now we can see all these testimonials are one below the other. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to display the image on the left side and this content on the right side. So if we go back to the Figma file, here we can see we have the image on the left and the text content on the right side. So if you go to the testimonial.jsx file, this is how the testimonial section is constructed. Here we have this division with the class of testimonial, and in that we have the image, and then we have this division which contains all the text content. So I'll just go ahead and set the display of the testimonial to flex. So let's tap hash testimonials, testimonial, and let's set the display to flex. And here we can see we have a gap of 28 pixels. So let's type gap 28 pixels. And if you scroll up here, we can see for the testimonial we have set a fixed width. So here I'll just type width and I'll just set it to 100%. Now let's go back to our browser. So this is how it looks. Now the next thing we will do is we will have some gap between these testimonials. So if you go back to the Figma file, here we can see we have a gap of 50 pixels. So let's go back and here for the content container, let's type gap and let's set it to 50 pixels. And now let's go back and this is how it looks. Now if you go back to the Figma file, here we can see from the left we have some margin, and from the top also we have some margin. So let's go back and here I'll just type margin left and I'll just set it to 20 pixels, and margin top and I'll just set it to 50 pixels. So this is how it looks. Right now let's go ahead and style the smartphone version. So let's decrease the width of the browser window. And for the smartphone version, let's go back to our Figma file and let's see how it is designed. So here we can see all these elements are in the center. So let's go back and let's create a comment. I'll just type smartphone version. Let's type at media, max width of 720 pixels. And we need to bring the text content to the bottom of the image. So let's select the testimonial division. So I'll just copy this selector and paste it over here. And here I'll just type flex direction and set it to column. And we'll also align items to the center. So now we can see that the image is on the top and the text content at the bottom. Now let's go back to our Figma file and let's say what is the gap. So here we can see we have a gap of 16 pixels. So let's go back and here I'll just type gap of 16 pixels. Right now we need to bring all this text to the center. So for that, let's go back to the JSX file. And here we can see we have this division with the class of reviewer details. So let's select that. I'll just type testimonials, testimonial, reviewer details, and let's set the text align to the center. And I think that looks all right. So that's it with the testimonial section. Now let's move on to the next section, which is the footer. Now for the footer, we don't have any changes in the tablet version. So here we can see the desktop version and the tablet version are the same for the footer. But for the smartphone version, we need to bring all these elements one below the other. So let's go back and let's go to the footer.css file. And let's create a comment. I'll just type smartphone version. And let's type at media, max width of 720 pixels. And let's select the container division of the footer, which is content container. So I'll just copy this selector and paste it down here. And here I'll just set the flex direction to column. And let's decrease the width of the browser window. Now we can see that all these elements are one below the other. Now here we have this copyright info. Now we need to bring it to the bottom. So if you go back to our Figma file, here we can see that the copyright info is at the bottom. So let's go back. And if you go to the footer.jsx file, here we have the copyright division. So let's go ahead and just hide this. So here I'll just type footer copyright display of none. And we'll just create a new copyright division for the mobile version. So I'll just copy this from here. And let's scroll down. And I'll just paste it over here. And for this, I'll just give it a class of copyright mobile. Now let's go back to our footer.css file, and here for the desktop version, let's just type footer copyright mobile, and I'll just set the display to none. And here, right now we can see that the copyright info is not being displayed. So let's type footer copyright mobile, and I'll just set the display to block. And let's also add some margin top of, let's try 16 pixels. And this is how it looks. Let's also change the styles. So what I will do is I'll just go back to the footer.jsx file, and I'll just remove this dash from here, And I'll just add these two styles over here so that we don't have to style it 2 times. So let's go back to the CSS file, and here I'll just remove this hyphen and I'll just type dot. And here also I'll just remove the hyphen and I'll just type dot. So we will have these two classes for the element. Now let's go back, and now we can see that the element is displayed over here. And I think we need to add some gap between these elements. So if we go back to the Figma file, we have some gap between these elements. So we have a gap of 40 pixels. Let's go back, and let's target the container division, which is this content container. So here for the content container, let's type gap, and I'll just set it to 40 pixels. I think we can remove the margin top from here, and we can also remove the margin bottom from these social icons. So here we can see for the social icons we have this margin of 24 pixels top and bottom. So I'll just copy this selector and I'll just paste it down here, and here I'll just type margin bottom 0, and now we can see it looks alright. So with that we have completed making the website responsive. Now for the heading we need to make some more changes, so we will make that responsive in the next video. Right, so that's it for this video. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comments below. And if you like this video, please click on the like button and subscribe to this channel to get the latest video updates. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a nice day.